Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton here with Brandon. 5 cards, 5 minutes. It's time to talk about Avatar, rares and double rares. Brandon, what's our first card?
First up, we have Aang, Master of All Elements. On play, heal, and then on attack, you can pay one, pitch one to mill the top 4 cards of your deck. If you have 2 or more colors remilled, you get to shuffle back 2. If you mill 3 or more colors, you get to burn 3. And if you hit all 4 colors, you can take the top card of your opponent's deck and put it straight into their clock. No canceling allowed. Pretty interesting card. Potential is really high on this card if you're able to get all 4 colors off. Definitely really interesting card with that choice trigger to be able to bring to the table with Avatar.
It's got some fun flavor with the 4 colors and the elements and all that. There's also a way to mill an extra card off of this effect. There's another card that you can have in your back row that allows you to mill 5. It's not going to be consistent. There are some serious deck building concessions you have to make to get enough of all 4 colors to make this even potentially useful, but you're typically going to get 3/3 out of a lane with this, with a shuffle back 2, so it's fine. And if you can find some consistency with it, it's actually pretty powerful. Next, Toph, Metal Bending. It's a level 3 on bar combo. When it attacks, if you have another character, you can do one of 2 things. You can either salvage 1, stock 1, or you can pay 2, burn 2. It also has, when it's attacked, top check, either mill it or leave it. So basically, this is what happens if Kanata and Maureen have a baby. If it stays on board, you have a pay 2, burn 2. So it's kind of trying to fulfill both ends of that without having to replace it on the board. It sits at 10-5, which is fine. It does just enough of both the mid-game combo stuff and the end-game stuff, where you're going to see a deck with this, and because it's on bar, it's not going to be hard to recur.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the thing that's going to be the most important with this being on bar, being able to try to loop this combo as much as possible. Having this card on field, not have to choose between your mid game and your end game. Notably, it doesn't heal, so that kind of ability to try to pull cancels is going to be more key here. Next up, we also have Azula, Verge of Insanity. This does on play heal. On attack, it gets power based off the number of characters your opponent has on stage. And when it scores its reverse, as long as it has the standby in play, you can pay 1, choose another character on your field, and send it to Waiting Room. You put the reverse character on top of your opponent's deck, and then burn 3. You have to have the back row 2/1 support in play to make this all happen. Thankfully, that back row support does give this card the ability to attack, and your opponents cannot back it up.
It maxes out at 11-5 on its own, which is just not big enough for an on-reverse combo, even if it has the back row support. Like, that's still 13-5 is still not a great number. I think this is the weakest of the 3 that we've seen so far, if only because it's super easy to play around. Next, another Azula combo, this one at level 1. If you have 2 or more other characters, it gains 2,000 power. On attack, reveal the top 3. Your opponent chooses an event or a character. You add it to your hand, and then you choose one of the other 2 cards, put it on top of the deck, and put the other card in the waiting room. This is terrible. This is really bad. I don't like this at all. I don't like combos that don't give you any option to choose what you get. Your opponent is just going to give you something that you don't need. The only saving grace is that it sits at 6 on defense, but even then, that's not very big.
Paired with the salvage trigger, this combo definitely has its usage somewhere, but it's probably not here. Last up, we have Sokka offering different perspectives. So when this card is placed on stage or into waiting room, you can pay the cost of a pay 1, clock yourself character from waiting room into the bottom of your clock. And if you do that, you can search for a cost 0 character, your level or lower, and spawn it to stage. What's really interesting about this card is its ability to do that when it hits the waiting room, especially when there are cards that can remove this from stage, or it can be stood over with standby, to potentially allow multiple attacks during a single turn.
Ultimately, I don't think this is a very viable mid-game engine, because you're just clocking yourself over and over again and planning on hitting your standby triggers at the exact right moment to proc this. I think this is most interesting at the top, where you can potentially get an extra attack or 2. If you're like in the standby top end or whatever, you can just summon an extra attacker. That's potentially interesting, but beyond that, I don't think this card is all that. It was the progenitor of the IMA build that recently got banned in JP, but this is not IMA, not even close. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back on Tuesday with a Clock Talk talking about the IMA ban, among other things. And then a week from today, we're going to have gameplay for Brandon's Avatar deck that he had up last week. The following week, another deck tech and more gameplay. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.
We'll see you then.